Well, here we are. Here I am at a major threshold point in my life, a major rite of passage, I feel, as tomorrow is my 40th birthday, which sounds completely crazy to me on one hand, but also like a breath of fresh air because I feel like this decade since I turned 30 has really encapsulated the theme of survival to sovereignty, the death and rebirth, moving through fires of initiation because my decade started with a cancer diagnosis at the age of 30, and that I feel really set the tone. But as I am at this threshold into 40, the next decade, which I hear is a good one, so I am embracing that. I really feel that my inner world has anchored into a level of mastery, and I'm experiencing this energy of peace and wholeness. And this whole summer has been quite intense. But what I'm really feeling is this embodiment frequency really truly beginning to anchor. So, my intention for this episode is to share my journey, yes, but specifically the lessons learned and what I feel is this kind of archetypal representation of the journey of death and rebirth into mastery, into sovereignty, into embodied wholeness. So I'm going to weave through my experiences, the downloads, because this is really where my full awakening journey has been is in the decade of my 30s, the deeper aspects of my journey. I had many seeds planted in my 20s, but starting with the diagnosis, being in proper survival mode, literal life and death, it was really this death portal of initiation. And now, my 40s, I'm really beginning with sovereignty, clarity, this sense of embodiment, and again, peace, which the peace that passeth all understanding, that is the frequency that I have really been working to anchor within myself, as within, so without, right? And so this isn't just about my story. I feel it is a map of healing that I have been, my journey was very much to really anchor and set the tone for the work that I do as well. And so it's like I had to go through this specific process, this specific set of initiations, and really walk the walk and walk the path, life as the mystery school, as the initiation. So here we are. Thank you for being here on this journey with me. And let's get into part one. The underworld descent initiation by fire, cancer as that doorway for me. So, at 30, I was confronting my mortality, not my morality, although maybe that was a layer of it, little Freudian slip there. And it was really this cracking open of the illusions of safety, of the illusions of the ego, what the ego thought it needed to feel fulfilled and successful. So, I'm reflecting back on my 30th birthday itself, and I am not the same girl. I am not the same woman that I was. There was this energy of seeking, and I don't want to say absolute desperation because not everything in my life was a complete disaster, but I was partying out in the Hamptons and I definitely had too much to drink that weekend, but that was kind of par for the course with people in my life, the binge drinking behavior, the big celebrations and stuff. And I very much did not want that energy for my 40th birthday. Some big pressure, some big hoopla, pressure to have some huge, party or event or, destination, birthday celebration or whatever. I was just like, I just want to feel peace. I want to feel love. And I want to feel just, this sense of ease and grace. And That's what I'm feeling internally. And I am just incredibly grateful for all of the lessons learned, for all of the opportunities that I've had to move from that version of me where my hair was literally even a more fiery color to this version of me that does feel softer and more trusting and more surrendered to God, right? So, there was, unbeknownst to me at the time, because I was at a very different level of consciousness and awareness of this journey itself as well, of course. So, yeah, there was this level of spiritual bypass, I suppose you could call it, toxic positivity, I suppose you could call it. And there was a lot of underlying trauma. And then there I was, hit with a cancer diagnosis that was basically forcing me to face the shadows, to do that deeper inner healing. And yes, I was receiving messages from the get-go. This was also bigger than me, that I had kind of incarnated to help heal the family lineage, to heal the family pattern of dying from cancer. And so there I was, literally faced with death, but also being told, this is not a time to fall into fear. You are meant to face death head on and overcome it, was basically the energy. So I gave myself a project heal. And I took the bull by the horns, as it were. And I really just faced what I needed to face, got honest with myself. Okay, I thought I was healthy. Obviously, there were huge gaps there. What did I need to fix in my diet? What did I need to fix in my mindset? What did I need to fix in my emotional world, my energetic frequency, and all of those layers, I spiraled deeper and deeper. So really, like my early 30s were very much about this underworld descent. But as we know on this journey, it's not a one-shot deal. So it wasn't just my early 30s that I was really brought deep into the underworld, but we are talking literally rebirth to the point of losing all my hair. I was bald as I was when I was a baby, and I was very bald when I was a baby. And then I had to literally rebuild my body, my health from the foundation up. So when we're talking about really going through the dark night of the soul and rebuilding and going through the death and rebirth process, like I literally went through that. I literally was reborn. I had a moment even in the diagnostic process where I stopped breathing. I turned purple, woke up with an oxygen mask on my face. I had many fainting episodes. I had a fever at one point because of an infection in my PICC line. And there were, I don't want to ever say I was like at death's door. I don't want to say that because I don't think I truly was. I never had that like moment, but I I was really confronted with that reality, very full on, right? And karmic wounds from past lifetimes were starting to come up to the surface. I was really starting to understand my multidimensionality more. I was opening up more to this idea that we are more than this body, that we are more than this one lifetime. And the punishment for truth telling in Atlantis became to, it started to come to the surface as well. So there were many experiences where I was beginning to reclaim my truth, but also my voice. And so this process was really helping me to reclaim my power and my sovereignty and to return to wholeness. In 2019, when I guess I was about 34 or 33, turning 34, I suppose, I had this message come through, healing back to wholeness. And I was like, this is what I am meant to teach. I had my health coaching certification and mindset and holistic well-being processes in place, but my soul kept guiding me deeper, and I knew that it was this wholeness frequency. But little did I know at the time, I knew at that point I wasn't quite there yet. So I wasn't ready to hold that container. to help people because my intention was always to help people heal. I was like, well, here I have a cancer diagnosis and I'm learning so much about how to heal my body, how to manage treatment. Of course, I meant to help people in this way. But my soul was like, no, you're going to go deeper. No, you're going to go deeper. When I was diagnosed, I had a decent job. I had a decent career path laid out for me, education, SAT, ACT, math, science, all of that, director of the performance program, integrating mindset and, this understanding of anxiety, integrating my yoga teaching certifications as well, integrating my master's in psychology from a more broader perspective, social and cultural psychology. It was a decent path, but my soul was like, no, this isn't it for you. You're not going to settle for this because I was not fulfilled. And I didn't feel completely seen or valued in the space where I was. And so my soul was like, pulling you out, and we're going to put you on the path that you're meant to be on. Little did I know how deep it would force me to go. So when the cancer diagnosis hit, it really cracked me open and it was a process of unfolding. It really stripped all the illusions and it forced me into this space of surrender. But I did have a lot of tools under my belt already at the time I started meditating. Well, I knew I needed to start meditating. That was one thing that with all my yoga trainings, I kept avoiding and resisting. It's like I couldn't sit for more than 2 minutes. And that was a sign that my body was holding on to pretty deep trauma because literally my physical discomfort got in the way of me being able to settle in. I had done introduction to meditation course in India years back. I had two meditation courses, Zen Buddhism, introduction to Buddhism and meditation. And yet still there I was years later, unable to sit for like 2 minutes. My mind would start racing. I was like, this is a waste of time. I'm uncomfortable, right? And so this is really that initiation by fire. It's like, no, you've got to learn to sit with yourself. And I started visualizing and enacting the power of placebo through the mind, right? And it really does work. I visualize myself healing and being healed, celebrating, already being healed in the energy of celebrating at my sister's wedding, celebrating being in remission, being healed, healthy, happy, whole, dancing. Whole pressure is off, in remission. My whole family could celebrate. And so that is what I visualized. And it worked because that's exactly what happened. 3 days before my sister's wedding, I had the remission scan. I had a beautiful wig. The hair was gone, but my spirit felt happy again, once again. So this is not, when we talk about the fires of initiation, it's not about destruction, but it's about the alchemy of purification. This is the true Christ flame energy that makes space for creation to come through, true creation. I was like, okay, now I'm going to write. I'm going to write a book. It took me a while to write a book, but I finally got my first book out last year. So celebrating that, the audiobook is still in the process, but it's coming. My goal is by the end of this month. We'll see. Um, but yeah, so it was just this really potent journey of death and rebirth. And, I kind of feel like it's survival to sovereignty, lost and found is another phrase that was coming through. It kind of is like reflective of that desert journey where you don't know where you're going because the honest to God truth, the honest to goodness truth is I did not know I would wind up here. At any point in the journey, I did not know where I would be going. Nothing is what I thought it would be by this age, right? In my life, in my external reality. And I am very happy with where I am. And that is a gift. That is a blessing. I mean, I have life, I have a healthy body, and I am in service to God in a way that I never thought I would be. And that is more fulfilling than anything else that I thought I wanted. And yes, there are still things that I feel are, waiting for me through the threshold, perhaps. But it's like I had to be ready to really experience the fullness of that experience that I, desire, like motherhood, for example. And it's really coming through this trust, faith, and absolute surrender to God and to divine orchestration and timing. And I never thought I would be in the center of Mexico at the age of 40, about to be 40 tomorrow. But it's been a magical journey. It's been potent and deep and profound. But to get here, I went through so much fragmentation, having to close the karmic loops, dealing with betrayal of the spiritual communities. But I also have experienced an incredible amount of beauty, magic, and bliss, and synchronicity and growth. And that reclamation of my voice. Here I am with a podcast. Had you asked me when I was younger if I would be doing this, I think by 30, I kind of might have had an inclination. Definitely after cancer, I saw myself, being an author and perhaps going on, podcast, whatever, however that would have looked, to share about my experience. But when I was younger, oh my gosh, that would have sounded like absolute insanity, right? So I really had to be stripped away of everything, including my hair and my health, to really blossom into the fullness of who I came here to be, who my soul really came here to express, that higher self aspect, continuing to embody with each initiation more fully into my being. And so, I've had a lot of beauty and magic, but also a lot of struggle in my 30s. So some of the beautiful experiences I want to share, going on a retreat in Bonaire right after diagnosis, fully bald, it really helped me to just reclaim the beauty and the magic and the love of life in this world. Right after, and it was kind of ballsy, honestly. I went scuba diving and everything. And having had a growth the size of a grapefruit compressing my heart and my lungs, like my breathing had been impacted by the tumor, the growth. And there I was, like scuba diving. It was beautiful though. And, good thing I wasn't like in fear, because I wouldn't have allowed myself to have that experience if I was in fear. I was just embracing life again. And things just kind of financially worked out. I had worked just enough over the summer while I was in treatment to be able to justify it, to pay for the retreat. It was a super cheap flight, business class, even. I think I used my points or whatever at that point, and then it aligned for me to go on this incredible rock climbing trip in Colorado for young adult cancer survivors. And then I was nicknamed Queen. And I was like, oh, that they gave it to me. They gave me that nickname. And I maybe because I was wearing a headband or something when I arrived at the airport, but my hair was still very short, pixie, like a full year later. It took my hair a long time to grow in. And so, it's like I really had to let go of that ego aspect of self, but I didn't even realize that, the depth of the meaning that that would have for me as I continued on my journey. But then I moved down to Miami, and that was a whole process that unfolded and activated a lot of my past lifetime activations, including Atlantis karma. So I was really starting to rebuild and get back on my feet, but I also experienced a fair amount of the darker shadows of my being, or that, energies that were trying to keep me in survival, however we want to look at that. When we have shadows, that's how the psychic attack gets in, right? And so we use the opportunity that is granted when we have psychic attack to really do that deeper inner work. It's not about being a victim, but there is a reality where there are beings that are trying to prevent us from stepping forward onto our path. And it's not to be in the darkness, but it's also to not bypass this reality that exists. When you step into spiritual service, when your soul steps into its true path, and even if you're not even totally thinking that you're on a spiritual, super spiritual path, because I didn't at first, your even unconscious action of stepping forward and embracing that path, they will begin to descend on you to stop you from doing that, if especially if you have a particular mission or template. They will do everything in their power to throw people at you with that narcissistic type energy, or to take advantage of you. Or, I had all sorts of things happen. I was scammed multiple times. I was very financially targeted many times on my path to keep me under resourced, kind of thing, right? And so I've lost a lot of money on this path. I have, given my power away to people, coaches, mentors that were not at all in integrity. And in hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. Like, that is so far out of integrity. And I had paid them a lot of money. So it's like I made a lot of mistakes on my path in that phase of my journey where I was really seeking, really trying to open up and step into my power. And there's also the beautiful aspects of that is that, I did receive this download, healing back to wholeness. I received this message, you are the diamond. And had no idea what that meant at the time, the depth of the profundity. I didn't know what ascension was when I received that message. I was aware of this awakening journey and stepping more deeply onto the spiritual path, but I had seen my arm with this crystalline essence in this visualization, this vision that I had. And I didn't understand that here we are actually in this process of ascension. It's really to activate the light body, the crystalline light body, right? And so, it's just interesting how it all wove together. But during that time, I also had the incredible opportunity to go to South Africa on a trip, another trip for cancer survivors, women cancer survivors. And so I was really being gifted these opportunities to expand my life, to keep exploring the world. Part of my gene keys is boundlessness, and I do get filled up by travel. But the flip side of that, and I went to one of my first festivals actually in South Africa, and that festival experience was, I'll get into this in a moment, but I touched on it in my last episode on Burning Man, that there's a lot of beauty that I experienced, a lot of opening, and potentially even awakening certain aspects of myself, experiencing this level of euphoria, and, perhaps not through the most organic means, but, it really opened me up in a lot of ways to have these experiences. And then when I got back, I was completely exhausted, and it really highlighted to me that I had to get to the bottom of my insomnia, my hormone imbalances that were still there way after treatment. And so, I was just going through these cycles of healing. I had to rebuild my gut health. I had to regulate my hormones. I had to regulate my sleep. And that took time. It took patience. It took surrender. And there was a lot of resistance, but I got there. I kept going. I never gave up on really stepping into my power, but there was no way that I could really step into the vision that I had for myself when my body was just not cooperating, when I wasn't sleeping well, right? I had flown to London a couple times. I even got a little bonus layover in Frankfurt, my first time in Germany, and I do have German ancestry, so I was always kind of curious about Germany and the markets and stuff like that. And I was there in autumn market time, so that was really lovely, on my way to South Africa. And so, it's just like I had a lot of beautiful experiences that aligned for me, but also a lot of darkness. I dealt with some very misaligned energies when I was in Miami, getting into that world, that newer, because I had, let's just suffice to say, it was a different kind of going out that I was experiencing in Miami than what I had experienced in New York and everywhere else, that, in my 20s, let's say. And it was opening me up in some beautiful ways, but it was also kind of exposing me on the periphery to some kind of dark underworld energies that can come with this culture, with rave culture, with festival culture, right? And then COVID hit. And right before COVID hit, my Nana died. My dog died on the same day. They put my dog down. It was all very sudden and synchronistic. And I've spoken into this a little bit in my journey in my previous episode. So I don't want to repeat myself too much with this, but just to kind of bring the full picture together, that it brought me through this portal of grief as the world was shutting down. But within a few months, my world was starting to open back up, and I had my full blown awakening. So in my mid 30s, yes, in the midst of COVID, I started to fully embrace this path. I went through the deeper initiations, and I started an embodied ascension program in the fall of 2020 after a bunch of synchronicities. And then rose petals came into my path. I was being guided by feathers and roses very clearly to the priestess path, the priestess of the rose lineage. And the feathers have continued to follow me. So it's like weighing the heart and the feather. And so this whole process has really been about healing my heart and reclaiming the emerald heart, activating the emerald heart, my middle name, Erin, Ireland, the Emerald Isle, the Emerald Heart at the center of my name. Heart. And so I was going, unbeknownst to me, even at the start of the priestess path, being activated into the Christ Sophia frequencies, the Grail lineage frequencies, really working on the Atlantis karma, clearing that, working on the Atlantis grids, the Ireland grids, even from a distance on some level, connecting with the Mother Arc, reclaiming that Sophianic essence. That's really where I've been brought to. And it's just been one step at a time, not seeing the end goal. I started remembering my soul names, my soul keys, activating the crystalline blueprint, the Grail bloodline energies and frequencies, right? And I also got to learn heavily discernment, false light versus true light. I feel like I had to move through some of the new age distortions and teachings to kind of get that data, to have the experience of having walked through it, kind of similar to festival culture. I was meant to move through it, but not stay in it. But looking at where the New Age glamour kind of seduces, whereas the Christ Sophia template, it's very restorative. So the New Age will keep you in karmic loops and cycles, right? And this just came through so potently in a session, a beautiful session I had with a beautiful soul yesterday, a womb restoration. And we cleared a lot of deep, dark, heavy energies were coming off, but she has been trying to heal this specific pattern, this specific energy. She's been trying to clear it for 15 years. And it was still there. She never got to the root after 15 years. And she did like deep purges, all sorts of different processes of reclamation and programs and healing after healing after healing. And yesterday in the one session, so much was coming off, and it was visceral. The restoration that was happening, she was feeling giddy. This essence of delight was coming through. Like her DNA was feeling sparkly. She said she felt like squeaky clean, like she had just gotten a teeth cleaning on her energy field kind of thing. And yeah, it just highlighted so profoundly for me how incredibly graceful this work is when you truly allow the Christ Sophia frequencies and working through God's source, Christ Sophia as an emanation of God's source. This is where that restoration and redemption even comes through, right? So really looking at nuance here as well. We're in such a polarized world that even in this community and this path of awakening, a lot of people are choosing comfort over truth, the love and light, the bypass. They don't even understand that they think they're doing the work on a lot of levels, but the path here is to choose truth over comfort always. I've been speaking into subjects that I know are not going to land with everybody because they don't want to hear it. But for me, my gene keys are truth and illumination. There is no part of my soul that will let me settle for the illusion. And I'm not saying I have fully gotten there, but my path has brought me on this deep journey of reclamation of my power and my voice speaking up against COVID and the vax. Like I lost a fair amount of friends from my past due to that. It created some friction and let's say a degree of separation with people, in my own family as well. And so it's been kind of painful. Going through this process is not easy. I've experienced a lot of deep grief, but also the amount of beauty that I've been able to experience is unsurpassed. My niece was also my first niece was also born in 2020, and then Tulum aligned, and then the priestess path opened, and then all these synchronicities led me to going to live in Tulum for a few months, which turned into 5 months. Roses were showing up on my path. Then, the deeper shadow work and healing of through this path brought me, to have these experiences. I traveled around Mexico a bit, and then I came to San Miguel de Allende 4 years ago for a festival, and that opened up Morocco, which then opened up Egypt, where I had really deep karmic past life energy to resolve. I also went to Barcelona for the first time, Familia Sagrada for one, but also it was a trip that I had had to cancel way back when I was studying abroad. And I'd always wanted to go there. And then Switzerland, I wound up going to Switzerland 6 times that year because I kept getting called back. And then I realized, oh, my Chiron Wounded Healer line goes through Switzerland and Tulum. So there's that masculine feminine balance energy, Tulum with the watery energy, Switzerland with the mountain energy. So it was really interesting to see how this soul path was opening up and guiding me on this journey to different grid points, to different vortexes and stuff that was really opening all of these past life soul key energies, let's say. I went to Turkey, I went to Amsterdam, I went to Greece, Portugal, where I went to Tomar, where a lot of the Grail coding was held, and that was purely synchronistic. I literally was in Greece, like, where should I go next? And somebody was in Portugal, and I didn't even wind up seeing that person there, that group that they were with. I didn't even see them once. But once I landed, I was like, okay, why am I here? And then synchronistically, I learned about Tomar, where it held a lot of the Knights Templar Grail energy. And I was like, okay. And then I went to Ibiza, and then I went to Austria and Bratislava even, and back to Switzerland. I went to Crete. And then I flew back to Mexico, Oaxaca for Dia de los Muertos. And then I went back via Switzerland again, a lot of Geneva energy. I went to Egypt on my pilgrimage and then back to Tulum in 2022 to integrate. So the Nile is the masculine chakra system, and the Yucatan, I learned when I got back, is the female chakra system. And so there is this Tulum Switzerland connection, this Tulum Egypt connection, there's this Egypt Switzerland connection. And so I was really on this journey of unwittingly activating all of these karmic timelines that, my power had been taken away, for example. And I was there to integrate the masculine and the feminine and to heal the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine within, right? And so 2020 year 2022 is also the year that I lived with the dark healer. And I didn't know at the time, obviously, but then we went on this Mary Magdalene pilgrimage at her suggestion, and I wound up going to England and France, activating the Avalon and Cathar coding. And I went to Montségur and had an incredibly beautiful, profound experience. I saw the most incredible, beautiful light codes when I was up at the ruins of that castle at the top of the hill. It was beyond incredible. And that coding was activated within in me, the Cathar prophecy, the Church of Love energy, about the laurel. I'm not remembering it exactly, but that was activated precisely when I started my priestess path a year prior. And so it's really fascinating when I see the bigger picture of how things were often falling apart. But I was also guided to go deeper and deeper, and things opened up when it was meant for me to be opened up and activated. And things fell apart right after that France trip. But at the end of the day, I also was integrating so many of these codes that I started guiding activations and creating the foundation for my school this year, Illumina Wisdom School. And I have an entire curriculum to guide people through the process at this point with loads of activations, with basics like breath work and energy cleansing and protection, as well as getting into the elemental layers of things, but down to the bare bones basics of, are you eating right? Are you breathing right? Are you hydrating? Are you integrating your trauma? Doing the shadow work, how to walk through that process and navigate it one step at a time, healing your body, getting your mindset right, but also not bypassing, right? And so, I had been stripped away of certain things, but it also brought me into this integration and embodiment phase. So I now realize that, I was guided on this journey to open up a lot of these timelines so that I could activate the keys, codes, and remembrances, but also to clear the karma and to close the loops. So fast forward to 2023 fall, I was very much guided down to Florida, kind of a last minute thing. And it just all aligned once again. And I finally went back to my storage unit where I had put everything in the end of 2020, thinking I'd be back in 3 months. 3 years later, I go back and I find journals. And I happened to open, I had a stack of journals. I happened to open this one journal to this exact page where I had written a message that I had received after one of my first Akashic Records trainings. After my first one, I will return to Miami to close Atlantean timelines. That was a message I had received. And there I was back in Miami like 3 years later. And it wasn't until that spring that I was able to clear the siphon, but a lot of karmic energy was coming up. And then finally I did. And it was all very aligned and guided and synchronistic and orchestrated, but I was also dealing with a lot of targeting and attack, and I felt very much like I was in the underworld again. But the Lemurian energies opened up shortly thereafter in spring of 2024, and the Ireland Emerald Grail frequencies started coming back, the White Diamond Elohai Queen frequencies bringing back to the Queen. And then in 2025, this year, Mexico opened back up very synchronistically, San Miguel de Allende, and I completed the loop with a trip to Tulum in the beginning, but I didn't realize at the time that I was coming back here to close even larger loops that were opened up 4 years ago, the cycles that were open in San Miguel de Allende. So I've been going through some of my deepest processes yet in the last several months. And at the same time, my multidimensional gifts have been anchoring. I've been doing deep grid work. I've been doing a fair amount of purging and shadow work, and timeline clearing and collapsing, and literally like battling demons and winning, because when you really understand the frequency, it's all about love and there is nothing to fear, and it's really not even a battle, it's just a choice. So when you are ready to face it, then these energies are let go of, they're cleared from the field, but one has to be ready to just fully face it. That it's really simple, actually. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is simple at the end of the day. So here I am now doing womb and light body restoration, emerald heart healing, and I've learned that this healing process is not linear. It spirals through timelines, through lifetimes. But the key is to really keep showing up and staying true to your voice and your essence. And yeah, the integration and embodiment has really led to this return, this restoration even of the Sophianic essence. But through the process, I've faced loads of betrayal and backlash, but there has been, these energies, these Atlantean karmic loops were closed. I finally figured out that once I learned that the siphon, oh, it was going down to Florida that I learned that the siphon was there. And I realized that this was part of a much deeper Atlantean karmic energy that had to be resolved. And so it's just really fascinating how this process has just unfolded for me, completely orchestrated, aligned, guided, however you want to call it. But it's been a process, a journey of shedding, of unlayering. But as I've gone through and kept trusting and surrendering, yes, there's been resistance along the way, to be sure, frustration, to be sure. But I have been creating firmer boundaries, really connecting with people who are actual allies and true friends. And I'm not, negotiating, what is true and right for me anymore. I have claimed my voice, created my channel, podcast, YouTube is actually, getting out there now in a more tangible way because truth telling is part of my mission. And again, my book, it brings people through the entire process. This was channeled, this was transmission, let's say, in December 2020, right? I've spoken about this a few times already, but this was when I was really starting to open up. And years later, I stand by everything that came through and I elaborated and filled in details and nuance as I learned. But it's very practical guidebook of healing and awakening. And it's a great primer, but also if you're on the journey, it's not it's not all basic energy. So yeah, I do highly recommend it, honestly, because it will help to anchor and integrate what you might have been experiencing yourself. And it's just going to resonate with a lot of people. That's the feedback that I've been getting. So, this is, I was talking about my masterpiece in the making years ago when I first started my blog before I was diagnosed with cancer. At the age of 30, I finally decided to start my blog. And that was kind of maybe an activation and initiation in its own right. But finally, I wrote my first book, but I was talking about this art called Life, masterpiece in the making. And I did not know they were going to say this. They called this a masterpiece. And there, in a couple of reviews, you can see it. So deeply humbled by that. But I've been reclaiming, the feminine aspects of myself, the principles of beauty, truth, sovereignty as well, that grail aspect really coming through, activating divine union within. That wholeness frequency, I really feel is finally being embodied. And I did not know what a tall order it was at the time. Wholeness as a frequency and emanation of inner union, sacred inner union within, the union, the merging of the masculine and the feminine in a beautiful balance and harmony. So I am living the teachings myself, and it's really turned these deeper wounds into true gifts, right? And so this has been just such a deep process of light body restoration, dissolving the old timelines and womb sovereignty as well. And really embracing all the aspects of myself, weaving in, the Sophianic currents and the Sophia aspect, that I didn't even really consciously have attunement to before on my path. And the Christ Sophia has really become my compass back home to the heart of truth. The heart of truth is obviously my podcast name, and that just has been a theme, right? And so, this path of mastery, grail mastery, even, it's not about escaping the world, but embodying the eternality of who we are in the here and now. And so, in the last few months, it's really been about healing the betrayal wounds, even sisterhood wounds, the voice wounds, the wounds, the karmic entanglements, and clearing the space to step into true service. But know that when you choose to step into true service, you will go through initiations, and it will not necessarily be easy, and your life will at the same time be filled with grace. So, my choice to speak truth publicly on YouTube through my podcast, it risks backlash, but this has also been a process of reclaiming my voice. I've gotten mostly very positive comments, but some kind of nasty things out there, and I'm like, okay, you don't have to resonate, and we're going to block you if you're going to actually be nasty, right? I don't have to put up with that, right? That projection, but it's often, bots even just trying to get us off the path. And so this really is about a transition from surviving, being in that survival struggle frequency, Scorpio South Node here as well, surviving the initiations to really building that inner architecture. So as within, so without, we can actually build the architecture for a beautiful new future, a more beautiful future based on the frequencies of this peace, love, harmony, beauty, bliss, the new earth frequencies, if you want to call it that, anchoring heaven onto earth. So liberation really isn't about endless burning and burning and burning. It's also choosing to build, choosing to step into your power, your sovereignty, and embody that golden age essence now through your being. That's what it means, right? And so here at the threshold of 40, I do feel that I am stepping into sovereign leadership. And it's really feeling like this moment of closing loops and integration of all my soul fractals, stepping into that Christ Sophia sovereignty. I very much see how guided I was to certain processes and containers to assist me on this path. And I wasn't even looking at it in this way, but it has beautifully helped me emerge into this threshold of 40, into this threshold of a new decade where a lot of people see 40 as that time of life when you know yourself and you're more embodied in that frequency of mastery and service where you are ready to step forward. And I see now how I have been beautifully brought to this place, moving from that struggle, collapse, destruction, burning energy into building a legacy, leadership, creation. And I feel I'm just beginning, truly, but the foundation is very fully anchored. It's there. It's already up in my inner temple. And, like everything is available in my inner temple. I have created a temple, is what I've been building. And so I'm claiming my mission, as this, this a soul who chose to come here to help anchor these new frequencies. It's a tall order. Many of us are here to do this in our own way. But yeah, the message here is to just remember that like there are initiations that we have to go through. And just a note about 40 itself. A lot of people are like, oh, 40, you're like over the hell. And I'm like, no, I'm just beginning. And it's not about your youth fading. Most people will be like, what? You're 40? Yeah, I don't feel it. I know I don't look it. And I'm not just saying that. Nobody ever thinks I'm 40. A lot of people think I'm in my mid 20s or like early 30s maximum, right? But this is not about your youth fading. We're also changing those timelines of aging, but about that clarity, sharpening, and activating within. And so I feel like I'm kind of claiming my crown, claiming my grail crown from that. It's a frequency of embodiment, really. It's that sovereignty, maturity, mastery, and this not to, sound whatever, but kind of this radiant energy that is really, I feel now starting to actually integrate and anchor, but above all, peace and wholeness. And that is the greatest gift that I could possibly imagine, right? So I am honestly just deeply grateful at this point for this past decade of chaos, of the fires of initiation, because it brought me here. And honestly, being here, I was not here a decade ago energetically, this frequency, right? You can see it in photos, right? That my energy was just not the same. And so this decade of grief, of transfiguration, of transmutation, of alchemy has brought me here. And I could not think of a greater blessing than that. So this is really about stepping into that courage, that if this resonates with you on any level, just remember to keep trusting, to keep anchoring in faith, and love and keep anchoring into God, Christ frequencies, and to surrender, ultimately surrender. Not from a space of giving up, but from the space of giving it over to God and allowing that guidance to come through the heart, to allow your heart to blossom open and be that source of wisdom and guidance, to be the compass, right? So, like, we can look at this as decades, but also just phases of our life. What decade are you in right now? What phase of your journey are you in? What patterns are you closing? What loops are you being called to witness and close? And then what light are you ready to build with? Are you actually ready to step forward and stop being in these karmic cycles and loops? So, your voice, whether you speak it publicly or not, this is something to claim. It's your truth. This is the center of your truth. So speak it aloud to yourself. Write it out in your journal. What is your deepest truth? What is your guiding heart, soul knowing? What is it guiding you to do? So, if my story resonates, I hope this just ignites some kind of remembrance within you that your journey too is sovereign and it is sacred and it is very, very much guided if you allow it to be. And so, with that, as always, thank you for being here. If you would like to go deeper, all of my offerings are in the description. If you would like to just support me in another way, I would very much welcome any donations, any birthday gifts to support the channel and to support my work. I will share my Venmo and PayPal in the description as well. Never expected, but it would be so incredibly appreciated. And if you want to actually receive guidance and wisdom to help you on your path to go deeper, the Inner Temple, I highly recommend. There is so much in there now to support you, including the Psychic Defense Masterclass. Part 2 will be live on Tuesday, September 9th. And then we're going to really go deeper with an activation later this month on Equinox, the 22nd, to harmonize, to come into inner harmony as well. And you get access to a bunch of activations, the entire foundational content of Luminary, hundreds of videos, dozens of activations. It's all already up there. It's all already accessible to you to consume in your own pace. And there's going to be new stuff coming continually as well. And if you like to go deeper, I do offer the one-on-ones. That is a true karmic liberation, a soul restoration, a womb restoration as well, depending on what you feel aligned with and called to in this moment, as well as Grail Mastery mentorship. So send me an email if you are interested in a deeper mentorship. It's really going to be so incredibly profound. And I have more coming. So everything is integrating in a different way, in a higher frequency of expression than even in May, when I thought I was like, all right, this is it. We're ready to go. Because of everything that I've been activated with and integrating myself, it's coming through in a much more fortified frequency. And so that's actually going to be upgraded as well. What I'm going to be offering soon, the deeper containers. But this is where the true mastery becomes integrated. So thank you for being here. The likes, subscribes, comments, shares, all of it, the follows. It helps. It supports me energetically. And I am just so appreciative of you all for being here along for the ride on this journey. And there's so much more to come. So stay tuned, onward and upward in love and light as we journey home to the heart of truth. And I appreciate you all so much for being here with me. It is such a blessing and an honor, truly. And I'm just sending you all so much love. Thank you for tuning in to the Heart of Truth podcast with your host, Amanda Erin Kelly. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review on your favorite platform. And if you'd like to go deeper, grab your copy of my book, Let There Be Light, and join us inside the free community in Illumina Wisdom School, where you can access free resources to jumpstart your journey, such as a higher self activation and the Body Temple Blueprint Masterclass, as well as explore the plethora of resources, including Awakening Fundamentals and Luminary, my signature path to wholeness and mastery, to help you become your own healer and sovereign authority. You can access everything at thisartcalledlife.com or find the links down in the show notes below. Until next time, onward and upward in love and light as we journey home to the heart of truth.